All right, guys, welcome to 1.2.2 of Algebra 2. So today we're actually going to be doing the first part of a two-day lesson here. Oops, that is the wrong slide. Spoilers for you. All right, so we're going to be taking a look at the function 1 over x minus h, where h can just be any kind of number, but this is the first of what's called the rational functions for us. It's called rational because it's a fraction. Right? So what we're going to do is you're going to investigate on your own for a little bit, and then I'm going to pull you back, and we're going to try and go through one of these on our own. So what I want you to do is pick any number you want between -10 and +10, and you're going to plug that number in for h. So that would be your particular function here. So if you picked h is 5, you would say your function is 1 over x minus 5. Right? If you picked -2, yours would be 1 over x minus a -2 or x plus 2 in a more simplified form. And then what I want you to do is try and investigate that by saying, hey, what does it look like? What's the table, stuff like that. No, all I want you to not do is just go on Desmos and graph it. So here are some kind of guidelines for doing that. So first, make a table of it. Try and plot those points. See what, and then see, hey, what would that look like when you graph it, stuff like that. Then you're probably going to need to pick some more close points. When you're picking points for your table, try and pick 5 that are less than your value and 5 that are higher than your value. If you just want to go 3 or 4, it's fine too. 5 is a good number to make sure you're kind of seeing what is going on. So try that out. Work through all of these steps here. Once you've gotten to a good point, and then come back here and I will go through that same process with my own, and you can kind of check and make sure you were kind of getting everything out of that. All right, so if you're back, I'm actually going to do this on Desmos just because it's a little bit easier for you to see versus me trying to draw it by hand. I want you guys to be doing it by hand though, just so that you can kind of see it a little bit nicer there. So I'm going to be having, I'm going to do 1 over x minus 4. So I'm going to pick 4 as my h value here. So I have it so it's not graphed, so we can't quite see it yet. But I can go ahead and make a table for this. So I'm going to have, let's do -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So that's what I'm going to do for my table, right? So if I were to plug in a -1, I'd have 1 over -5. If I were to plug in 0, I would have 1 over -4. If I were to plug in 1, I would have 1 over -3. If I were to plug in 2, I would have 1 over -2. If I were to plug in 3, I would have -1 over -1, or just -1. If I were to plug in a 4, I would get 1 over 0, which I can't do. So I'm just going to leave that one blank for right now. If I were to plug in a 5, I would have 1 over +1, which is just going to be a 1. If I were to plug in 6, I'd have 1 over 2, which would be a 1/2. If I were to plug in a 7, I'd have 1 over 3, or 1/3. If I were to plug in 8, I'd have 1 over 4, or 1/4. And if I were to plug in 9, I would have 1 over 5, or 1/5. So I'm kind of getting that shape there, which is kind of weird. I kind of go down, and then I kind of jump over this point here, and then I go back over here, and then I start to kind of go back down, but kind of smooth out in that point there. So that's the graph that I'm kind of getting at first, and that's nice. But if we take a look at later on here in part D, it's saying, hey, let's try some values that are even closer to it and see what those are going to look like for us. So let's head back over to our Desmos screen, and see what's going on there. Okay. So if I want to go even closer to, so my number is 4, so I want to get closer to 4. So let's do like 3.9. All right, so x is 3.9. Right. So if I put 3.9 in, 1 over 3.9 minus 4, I'm at 1 over -0.1. So -1 over 0.1. Is that going to graph right for me? Yep, there it is. Okay. And then what if I were to do 4.1, right? Well, that would be 1 over 0.1. So I'm kind of there. Well, what if I back out a little bit? What if I go to like 3.5? I probably should have done that one first, but sorry. If I do 1 over 3.5, I now have negative 1 over 0.5. Right? And if I do like 4.5, I'm at 1 over 0.5 positively. Right? So we're kind of seeing, hey, it's kind of going and it's going further down. So what if I do like 3.7? Okay, well, if I do 3.7, 3.7 minus 4 is going to be negative 0.3. So that'd be negative 1 over 0.3. And if I did, let's do 4.2, right? That would be 4.2 minus 4 is 0.2, so 1 over 0.2. I'm there. So we're kind of seeing a definite shape here, right? As I go from the left, I start to kind of go down and then go really, really steep. And if I go further, you'll see they go really, really far down. And then up here, I'm going steep down and then kind of flattening out there. But again, I can't do anything at 4. Now, again, that's because it makes me divide by 0, and that's one of the big math no-nos, right? You can't divide by 0. So I'm not able to do that. So we should have a pretty good idea of what is going on at this point, right? So let's try and graph it out. So from there, my guess is, hey, this is going to go like this, and then kind of follow it down. And then something is going to happen here in the middle, and then it'll be kind of going down, and then following that to the right, based off of what I'm seeing here. Well, let's actually go ahead and show what that graph looks like. So here's the graph of the equation itself, and it's kind of doing what we predicted. Now, what's happening there in the middle is kind of nothing, but if I keep zooming out, these lines just go down, 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 and this one goes up, 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 and there's this jump. There's still nothing there at 4. So that's what we call an asymptote. That's a number which a word you may have heard of it in the past. We're going to see that a lot kind of going forward here. So I just wanted to kind of make sure we're all on the same page as far as that goes. All right, so let's take a look at the next slide here. All right, so what I want you guys to do is go ahead and try to answer these questions on problem 80. You've kind of gone over a lot of this. You can kind of disregard part D. We don't really do the learning log stuff. So try that out. Look at your table, try and figure out what you know about stuff and kind of why things happen. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the last part here. Okay, so I will kind of go over these really briefly. On our table, like we kind of saw, as we get closer and closer to that 4 value, we get larger and larger numbers, like this 1 over 0.1 is actually 10, so we're way up here at 10, things like that. And if I did like a 1 over 0.01, I'd actually be up at 100. Okay. And then at this 4x, you have an undefined, is what that's called. Now it's not going to graph because you can't just type that in and have it graph an undefined point, but it's undefined because we are asking our function to divide by 0 at that one point. Everywhere else is totally fine, but there it's going to be undefined because we're trying to divide by 0 at that one point. So that's what we get this asymptote. Now what an asymptote is kind of like an invisible wall that we can't cross or be on. So if I actually graph the asymptote, which is going to be, it will follow the point x is equal to 4. So you can kind of see that blue line there is acting as my asymptote. It's not actually part of the graph. I just put it there so that you can kind of more easily see what's going on there. You have the asymptote, which just kind of follows up and up and up. It'll never touch, and it goes down, down, and down, down, and it'll never touch the asymptote. The asymptote's kind of like a wall, which you can get as close to as you possibly can, but you can never actually touch it. All right. So with that, this is it for part 1 or day 1. Here is our homework for day 1. Oops, let me change your view. There you go. We're going to be doing 84 through 90 for day 1, and then we're going to finish this up tomorrow. So I will see you guys then.